Here he is again, the guy from Osterholz with the big orange hands. I'm drumming a bit more carefully today than usual, because things are pretty wild here. Hey, Linden and Funke Model 52. And before I dive into the details of this precious piece, let me show you some paper first, so we can get started here. And that's Usand, Linden and Funke factory. Why am I bringing this up? Because it's so rare. I've already touched on it a bit. I've of course searched and rummaged around. I found 2 other rifles worldwide. One is definitely somewhere in Germany. A second one could be in England. So it was an English-speaking forum, which means there's another one out there. I even think it was mentioned at Pyramid. And 2001, yeah, what do we have here? So, who is Linden and Funke anyway? Linden and Funke. It's a manufacturer of metal goods. I first heard that they produced a lot of belt buckles for the Wehrmacht during World War II. And even before that, they made riding gear accessories for the Reichswehr, like, for example, for rifles. These eyelets and hooks that you needed for that were also made by them, for example. Then I found here in an inner advertising page of a magazine some business stories from the advertising department. Here we have an advertisement for stirrups from exactly this company. 1900 7th. Patent number. Back then it was the imperial patent, which was always very important. Sporcher. Well, I have some trouble reading this old script. Sporcher. Usand. Curb bit. Ensures the correct function of the curb, connecting its tube and so on, with measurements. Yes, Linden and Funke eyes alone. Yeah, I haven't found much more in that direction. What I found, for example, is here is a letterhead. Unfortunately, that's also the only thing in this article, for example. Dealing with this, Linden and Funke. 2001. When could that be from? I don't know. 1929, this letterhead. Linden and Funke. Iserlohn Metal Goods Factory. I'll set this aside for now because space is really tight here today. This rifle, Model 52, it's very hard to find out anything about it. There's a good chance that the Model 52 actually comes from the year 1952. There's a vague possibility, I don't know, I can't say for sure. If anyone knows more about this thing than I do, please write it in the comments. That could be a pre-production model. There's a possibility of that. Why? Because in English publications I read about a serial number. There's no serial number here. At least I haven't found one. And it was written that the year of construction would be stamped on it. But I haven't found a year of construction here either. Here, I've printed out photos of one example, because of the differences. They are completely identical. On one hand, this piece of metal here, at the bottom, sticks out a bit, so it could be bent, but it could also be like that from the factory. I don't know. In this photo that I found, for example, it looks like the metal piece is more flat. As I said, the original photos are of course much better than this printout here. You can find it most easily with Google. The second thing that stands out is that the rear sight is positioned here at the front, in front of the loading roller. And in the photo, rear sight is positioned back here. With both rifles that I found online, it was like that. With both rifles, the rear sight was at the back. Here, it's at the front. Why? As I said, it could possibly be, for example, a forward pre-production model, whatever. Then we see here, this photo, this rifle has a bead sight, which means it has a little bead on a stick, right? And this thing has a classic sight. So who knows what happened there? It could also be that at some point something broke off there. Something was done afterwards, who knows what it was. But here, for example, it doesn't look like anything was ever here. Well, and the third point, I did take a picture of it here, but to be honest, it looks exactly the same here. And this roller, with which the Diabolo falls in from the top and then gets turned like that. The roller doesn't stand vertically when loading. Instead, it leans slightly forward. In the back of my mind, I thought that this tray would also be leaning slightly forward. It's not like that here. So that seems to be identical. So we have actually already clarified the differences. And then we can start at this point I believe I am presenting a precious gem of weapons collecting. Just a note, this thing doesn't belong to me. It belongs to an enthusiastic viewer who politely asked me to help sell it for him through Airgun because he really doesn't want to deal with it. I will do that too. We'll see what comes of it. He gets the money, so I'm not involved with, what's it called, commission fees or anything like that. That would be even better. I don't do that. I have a great video, and then we'll see what comes of it. I'll read it out to you first. The only labeling I found, like I said, no serial number, no letter designation at all, and no year of manufacture. I can only make an assumption about the year of manufacture. It says Model 52 here, then the Luffy logo, where Luffy, that's this, I don't know if you can see it, this diamond shape. Huh, too far back. The camera is obviously completely unsuitable for this. This diamond shape in the middle has Luffy written in it. I'll turn it a bit, hoping that the light will come in somehow. Luffy is actually the abbreviation for Linden and Funke eyes alone. That's where this quirky Luffy comes from. And behind it, oh my god, that's always tricky here. Linden and Funke. So, written out again with the third bold eyes alone. That's it. Oh, I just thought of another difference compared to the things in the photo. They had a sight rail. I don't know if it was glued on, screwed on, or attached in some way. This air rifle doesn't have a sight rail, and doesn't look like anything was ever mounted on it. I'm just going to assume that this shotgun is a Boyja 52. I'm just going to assume that I'm holding the device up to the camera again because you can really see a lot of rust spots. So this thing is about 70 years old. So actually a bit more than 70 years if you go by the 70 years. Now I wanted to say right. I read something about the company, about the manufacturer, namely that the BKK closed down in 1962. BKK is the company health insurance. Of course, if the company health insurance of a firm shuts down, you can expect that the company has also gone out of business. So, hello dear Weapons Center Gotha. Do you still have spare parts for this? Probably not, but I just wanted to bring it up. And the other thing was, I mentioned this somewhere before, the only picture I found of the factory. Apparently the cafeteria is still standing, because it's somehow architecturally interesting. To be honest, it looks like a very typical building from that era, but it clearly says up top, Linden and Funke eyes alone. Yeah, there's really not much to misunderstand about that. Condition? Yeah. 20 years, right? So the wood has seen quite a bit of the world. It has little dings everywhere, but overall it still sparkles and shines. I'll try to get it right this way. Here again, by the way, you can clearly see this greenish tint that the original doesn't have. It's due to my camera, the light color, whatever. We've got really nice dark wood here. At least on my monitor it looks more green. Well, there are relatively few dings. Something that's special here is that we have screws that are kind of unusual. That's actually a threaded rod, with ring nuts on both sides. So it's not like a cross slot or a slotted screw, but this is really something different. We have a fish skin in here, which is mostly still intact. So it still feels like fish skin. Back then it had somehow more quality than today, right? You could say it differently. Then here we have grip grooves on the right and left to create a stop. That looks like Bakelite, so some kind of plastic with slotted screws and no further labeling. I'll just go ahead and set it up. So that thing fits. You don't have to somehow submerge your head halfway into the stock to be able to aim. That fits. It has to fit, because there's no sight rail here, so no scope rail. Then let's take a look from below. Here we obviously have a steel trigger guard, a big slotted screw, a small slotted screw, and another small slotted screw. I almost suspect that this piece of metal has some kind of function, a spring function, because it's cut on the side. What exactly, I have no idea. As I said, I suspect it's slightly bent here at the front. I'm not mentioning this for you guys who are just watching, but for the collectors who might be interested in this thing. Of course, they want to know such details. What's also interesting is that there's another hole in the trigger guard at the front, and behind it is a slotted screw. So for me, being as bold as I am, the assumption for 2001 is that this fine piece has an adjustable trigger. I'll try to twist it like this. I always have to be careful not to knock over the spotlights with the barrel here. They're really too expensive for that. I'll turn it a bit back and forth, a bit more elaborate than usual. I think you can also see the screw from the front that it's inside the trigger. I'll go over it lengthwise here so we can get some nice close-ups of it. So this is probably something I'll never come across again. That's why I have to somehow record it. Yes, there are rust pits. We have a recess, a full metal rear sight. The sight, it doesn't click much. It moves more without a click, although there is still a bit of a click, but not very much. Barrel, the barrel runs, no, it's not bent. That's just the fisheye of the camera. 2001 sighting device, welded roof notch, and adjustable sideways, so it can be adjusted sideways. You really have to call it that. The rear sight does click sideways. The height clicks too, but in a completely different way. So you have to really pull on it here. You'll probably stay here. So you can practically adjust the height sideways. I don't know exactly how the system works, but luckily it still works. Shooting performance. You know, without a scope, I can't hit anything anyway. But the thing is, I've only fired, I think, 13 or 14 shots through the crown with this fine piece. On one hand, I didn't want to stress the thing more than necessary, even though it still works very well. But it only puts out about 1.5 joules. That means the pellets just barely reach the target and then drop into the pellet trap, so there's no point in trying to do a longer shooting series with a 70-year-old piece. What I will do, of course, is check the trigger. That means the pellets just barely reach the target and then drop into the pellet trap. So there's no point in trying to do a longer shooting series with a 70-year-old piece. What I'm going to do, of course, is check the trigger. The trigger is of exquisite quality. I really like it. Now first the function, you haven't seen this yet. Here's the underlever cocking mechanism. That's something completely different. So here is a hook latch. It doesn't work perfectly anymore. You really have to push down hard. Can you see how I'm just barely in the camera? So you really have to push down hard for it to click in, and then you should also push against it a bit, because that's where it is now. Because the spring is already quite weak, and when I let it go, pops back up. So here at this point, you really have to get in there. I think people who deal with such old things will know how it works. In the year 2001, there was a significant amount of background noise and other auditory disturbances, which you can see. I don't know, can you see it? I'll try to keep it calm. Check out the loading trough here. Can you even see that? The angles? It's a bit inconvenient. It's a bit inconvenient for everyone involved. So here, practically when you open this rifle, the cylinder opens as well. And when you close it, the cylinder closes too. So both rotate together. I read somewhere that this rifle is supposed to have significant similarities with the Falk 80. One of the differences with the Falk 80 was that the cylinder opens automatically, but it doesn't close automatically. Closes. I don't know if that's true. You don't find the Falk 80 very much anymore. So the tension resistance is quite significant. As I said, there's a lot of noise going on. The rest is audible. Can I hit it again? Yes, of course. There is no safety. There is also no automatic safety. Then what I wanted to show you is the trigger. Yes, in the meantime, it jumps back again. When I got the thing, the trigger moved back forward quite slowly after releasing it. There was a lot of grease involved, and it was older grease. So, click. Then let's throw a lead weight into this old-fashioned device. By the way, it falls in just as well forwards as it does backwards. You have to be a little careful. So now I have to step back a bit because there's a box in the way. Can you still see it? Yeah. Barely. Well, nice. So the function is perfect. I strongly suspect that the seal, main seal in the piston, was still made of leather back then. So if the original leather seal is still in there, it doesn't surprise me at all. It's not completely airtight anymore. now comes the big moment again where the dog jumps into the water. So, tips. That's what comes out of it. Okay, you're very good. Then let's take a look. It can't be that much because, like I said, I'm actually very satisfied with the trigger. 200 grams, 300 grams, 400 grams, 500, 600, 700 grams, 891, 100, 700 grams, 81 kilo. 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1. I didn't see the 6. So somewhere above 1500 grams, trigger must have broken. And it feels really good when shooting. So I think the trigger is great. That's nice. I usually have so much to talk about. 16 minutes 42, that wouldn't be anything. The question now is really, what else would I have to say about this that I've figured out somewhere? So, like I said, if you have any information, if you're bored and browsing around, feel free to write anything in the comments, because that will really be interesting. Yeah. It can be done that quickly. Are you going out? Yeah. That's the good old days, good old quality. What would people have paid something like that back then? I saw prices for other air rifles somewhere, so you could find everything from, I don't know, between 15 Reichsmarks to 150 Reichsmarks. And the Reichsmark was after the currency disaster, because the Reichsmark was as big as a wagon wheel. This one was probably built after the Second World War, so it was probably already paid in Deutsche Marks. Yeah. Here's something, maybe I can show it. You might be able to see it. Those are numbers, stamped or engraved, however you want to say it, on the little wheels. Just turn them back and forth a bit. Maybe you can see it better. The camera isn't really made for that kind of thing. If I put the thing up on Airgun, I'll take some regular photos first. So really with the camera, because this is a collector's item, it doesn't look like all the others. And everyone who bids wants to see everything in detail. Condition, rust, blah, 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 all sorts of things. Yeah. I would say that's it. I can take another look at the thing anytime. You guys just have to watch the video again. I can see that the stock is totally greenish up to here. That's nonsense. It's going towards brown. So, thank you all for your angelic patience. I hope you find out a little something. The collective intelligence is usually greater than mine. And then I would say, thanks for tuning in. Once again, it's the guy who's still completely shocked here, right? He's just tapping very carefully on the museum piece and whining to himself that he has to turn off his camera by himself. So in this case, it is, tell me, should I feel honored to get my hands on something like this? I think one or another curator from some museums would probably be licking their fingers over this. Yeah, then I'll go lick it too, but without gloves. So, until next time. Now I'm turning off, as always, not without a fuss, but sometimes I do hit the button here.